Welcome in to another edition of Noon Dish. Normally on Wednesdays, we are on Thursday today as we sort of put out in the ether last week and on the message boards. Going to do these next couple weeks on Thursdays. So, Mr. Don Callahan, the life of the party, Don Callahan, the expert of all experts, the greatest top five person evidently ever in the history of Noon Dish top five list, even got me to put on a shirt of one of his
Uh-oh.
favorite bands. Welcome in. Johnny T-shirt and Johnny T-shirt sponsor us. I'm Tommy Ashley. That, of course, is Don the Man. We got to work on the background. We got to really start working on our backgrounds here.
What's wrong with
Um,
the background?
I'm
We got
gritty,
gritty.
and the helmet's nice. I got some stuff back there. I got some shoes over here. Um,
I
at least
probably
I
do
got
need
sentimental
to.
stuff.
So what you can't see, let me see if I could, is I do have like the walls covered, but it's like I guess with where the camera is, it just it's right where it kind of ends, or there's like a break or whatever. So I need to, yeah, I probably need to step that up.
Yeah, we need to step it up. I've still got this space right here that I'm trying to. I've got an idea.
Okay, well at least you have an idea. That's my problem. I don't want to do something just to do it. I want to have an idea for it.
Well, I've got the idea. It's just a matter of doing it,
Gotcha.
and I just haven't had the time. Got a lot coming up in the next couple weeks, but maybe this summer we'll get that space filled. Noon dish this week. First of all, let's mention our MVP from last week, Mr.
Oh
Eric
yes,
Rust. Eric Rust earned the award last week. I
he has
think
some
I'm
good
pronouncing it
questions.
correct. Yeah, he asked good questions, and I pronounced the name that way last week, and he gave me props for pronouncing it correctly. So I hope I got it right. Shout out to him. Shout out for all the conversation on the top five list last week on the message boards. Top five musical acts. Uh, you know, Don stole the show with a couple I'd never heard of, and now I need to update my walking playlist
Well,
to include those.
it wasn't I think it took a life of its own on the message boards, which was
It was
interesting.
interesting.
And the thing too was the thread on the message board turned into like a rap battle sort of thing. Even though if you actually listened to the podcast or you were here with us last week, you know that the vast majority was like 70s rock, would you say?
Yeah, I think
Ish.
I think on the chat discussions, yes.
Yes, yes, yes. It was definitely because in the thread on the message board, clearly there's a couple people who didn't listen or watch because they're like, "Why wasn't Queen mentioned?" And I'm like, most of the top fives that were in this chat mentioned Queen. I mean, that was probably one of the ones that was mentioned the most. But um, what's our top five for later
So
on today?
so we need to think about it because I said it earlier, and we don't have one. We usually have one planned, and there were some great messages on the message boards about what we should do. But I'm thinking top five pet peeves. Can you
Okay,
handle that?
I feel like I need some time for that.
Well, you've got about 45 minutes
Okay, I'll see
because
what I can do.
we will close the show. I know what my number one is. No, I have several, and
Okay, yeah,
I'm gonna
I
have
can.
to tip people in my life with them. But I have several. But we're gonna go top five pet peeves, personal pet peeves in your life. That's a lot of popping in the mic. Uh,
Yeah, I'll get working.
Miller wins the day. Weird hockey mascots. Do you like ever fall asleep in your bonus room or your man tower and wake up and he's staring at you? Does
So
his eyes move with that? Is it one of
no,
those
it
type
does
stuff?
not. And I have I don't know if it's close enough for me to grab it. I have a gritty doll over there also. Top
That's
5 candy bars.
we could do. Okay, we're gonna
Wanna do
make a
that?
list. I don't really. I try not to eat that stuff anymore, but
But
we
you
can do
still
it.
have favorites, right?
We'll have multiple top fives. Let me start
All
this.
right, so which one we gonna do today?
I think we go with pet peeves.
All right, we'll go with pet peeve. We'll stick with five. Which President's President's top 5 IC journalists.
Uh,
Um,
I like whoever
I think
said
there's
it
only
right there.
5 IC journalists.
Sean Crawley wins the podcast again, man. He's working his way towards the MVP. Somebody said, "Don't keep giving the MVP to the regulars." Well, the regulars know what
Well,
toots the
we
horns.
just kinda started. I mean, how many weeks we've been doing this? So I don't know. I mean, I guess we could say, Sean has definitely made himself a regular, and so is Preston. But really, we're still establishing regulars.
Yeah, Josh Fernandez. I haven't seen that name a lot lately, so appreciate in the chat. Eric Miller, appreciate you guys joining. Tell your friends, get them all here. Don, let's get into it. It is summer camp season for football across the country, relevant to North Carolina, which is why we're on Thursday instead of on Wednesday. Just sort of update what your life has been like the last week since we talked, with the summer camp, the summer recruiting season getting in full swing.
Well, it really, the unfortunate thing is that the summer camp stuff, well, I'm obviously covering it. I'm obviously there in person. It's kind of taking a back seat to the official visits. You take Sunday, for example. UNC had its first camp of the summer on Sunday. Well, they also had their first weekend of official visitors. So most of my Sunday was spent dealing with that while also going to the camp on Sunday afternoon. I didn't get that report up until later, but we had some good stuff up. Having talked to all but one official visitor, we had some good stuff up. Midday Sunday, I'd say. But it's crazy. I was talking to a couple of people. Like UNC had 2 4-star quarterbacks, including one I believe that's in the top 100 from the 2025 class, who were on campus at camp on Sunday. And that wasn't the story because UNC had a commitment, which we haven't talked about either.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to get to that too. We kind of forgot. This is one of those months where it's like, because that commitment happened. That's Tim Lawson, tight end from Florida, committed to North Carolina. That happened on Monday, but it feels like it happened 3 weeks ago, which is probably why we forgot we had to cover it. But
Yeah, I did not forget. It's on my list.
oh, my bad. I'm not privy
Yeah,
to the list.
yeah.
So, but yeah. So these 2 5-star 2020, I'm sorry, 4-star 2025 quarterbacks who are on campus is just like, takes a back seat to all the official visitors that came in, who are going to come in this week. I'm sure we'll get to that also. But yeah, so it's been nuts. And then yeah, yesterday I spent all day in Chapel Hill. UNC has a specialist camp on this coming Sunday. As you mentioned, UNC has 707 next week, which is a camp that's going to take all day on Wednesday, which is the normal time for the dish. And then the following week, there's 2 more 707 camps. And then we have the Showtime camp also. So it's pretty crazy. And, the official visitor stuff doesn't stop. I mean, UNC will, as of today, UNC is projected to have more official visitors this weekend than they had last weekend. And the thing with last weekend that kind of lessened the blow a little bit was that 3 of the official visitors were committed. This weekend, it's just 1 committed official visitor. The rest, I think it's about a dozen-ish, are uncommitted, which is obviously a lot more significant.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and shout out to the folks that have joined us. You're listening to Noon Dish, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Liz asked about basketball in the chat. Check out the basketball board. Ton of news there, obviously, over the last week or so, or a few days or so, with a reclass, a reopening of recruitment, and a request to get out of a national letter of intent by a recruit that had been committed to North Carolina for almost 2 years. So all that stuff's on the message board. This is strictly North Carolina football recruiting and a little fun at the end of the show with the top 5. But appreciate everybody joining us. Don, let me ask you this before we dig too deep into the specifics here. Official visits in the summer, and I think I asked about it a couple weeks ago. With the signing date now in December, and it has been that way for a few years now, what happened to those official visits on game days? I mean, it seems like the overwhelming
Well,
majority are pushed till now, or
yeah,
preferred
yeah.
now.
I mean, it's funny. I was talking to Denora Cersei, who is now on UNC staff. I think he's I can't remember the exact title, but he basically handles the players sort of thing. And he was part of, God, I don't even, it was early or mid 2000s class. And during his recruitment, he took a bunch of official visits late in the fall during games that were significant, that helped him make his decision. And he was just kind of remarking about how crazy it is that the guys are deciding so soon. So yeah, I mean, it's so hard to tell what's going to happen. But last year we had in-season official visits we're likely to have the same thing this year, but the vast majority of official visits are taking place this month. And the vast majority of North Carolina's class is going to be committed by the end of the summer, to be honest.
Yeah, it's crazy how it sped up the process. Speaking of Denoris Cersei, former Inside Carolina podcast guest. We had the 2010 reunion. We had all those guys on several times, and Cersei was always great. Now he is director of football student athlete development
Yes.
at
Yes.
North Carolina. So that is an important position there. I'm sort of a liaison between the grown-ups and the players,
Yes.
and he's got an important role in, you always hear about people in charge of player development or student athlete development, whatever they want to call it. Cersei is one of those for North Carolina football, and Mac Brown, and good dude, hilarious. I
Yes.
mean, he is
Yeah.
absolutely a riot if you ever have a chance to talk to him. Don, let's talk about, you mentioned these quarterbacks, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sort of bouncing a little bit because I do want to talk about the commitments, but when you have big time quarterbacks on campus, especially when a lot of folks are fretting about quarterback recruiting in light of what they've had on the field the last couple of years, tell me a little bit about Luke Nickel. You've done a great article on him. Um, I still can't wrap my head around 2025
Yeah.
guys, but at any rate, what have you seen in him? What's the scoop on him without spoiling your wonderful article on the Tar Pit Premium message board?
Well, this camp visit was his second visit to North Carolina, and this is a kid whose older brother was a tight end recruit that North Carolina actually pursued, but I think he ended up signing with Michigan State. So the family's been through the recruiting process. They understand it. They know what they want. They know what they're looking for. So, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he is committed before the end of the football season to a school. And I think North Carolina is in a really good spot. So definitely check out that article to kind of see. But the cool thing for North Carolina with what they've been able to do for the 2025 class with the quarterbacks is, in addition to the two that came Sunday, Bryce Baker, the lone in-state 2025 quarterback offer, he camped on Wednesday. Those three are North Carolina's main 2025 quarterback targets. There is another one, Blake. I think it's, I don't know if it's Hubert or Herbert, because I think he is.
Is he kin?
What's that?
Is he kin to a certain quarterback from the West Coast?
No, I think. Well, I'm just
Nah, he's from
wondering.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, he's from Massachusetts, but he's at a boarding school. But anyway, so he's going to visit later on. He won't camp, but I don't know if, I mean, and obviously North Carolina has offered him and likes him. But the three I mentioned are the main three UNC's looking at, and so having them camp gives or gave Chip Lindsey another quality opportunity to see these guys throw, to also spend some time with them, to quote unquote put them on the board, sort of thing, to get an idea of just their mindsets and all of that. And I would assume that he has a really good idea of where those three stack up in his mind. The interesting thing from what I saw in camp, and we had a full, report on Sunday, as I said, you can read up on. But I felt like Nickel was definitely the more polished guy, whereas Antoine Hill, who is a top 100 prospect for the 2025 class, definitely looks apart, has a strong arm. He plays in an offense at Houston County,
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, where they throw the ball a ton. So he's using that arm constantly, but not nearly as polished. But definitely the raw skills are there for sure. So it was kind of an interesting kind of dichotomy with watching the two kind of go, because I mean, what happens at these camps is the better guys end up going one on back to back sort of thing. So kind of watching one throw and watch the other was interesting, and then watching Bryce Baker throw yesterday was great too. And I'm sure that Coach Lindsey really took a lot out of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about coaches needing to see guys live and in person. Just so folks will understand, Antoine Hill, 6'5", 215, listed nationally 55th in the country out of Warner Robins, Georgia. Of course, a hotbed down there. Be tough to pull him out of the state. Bryce Baker, 6'3", 185 from Kernersville, East Forsyth, and Luke Nickel out of Alpharetta, Georgia, 6'1", 200 pounds. Baker, 3'11 nationally, Nickel, 315 nationally, and of course, Hills up there. And you also have Blake, we'll say Hebert on
Okay.
Blake Hebert on, and I apologize for brutalizing the name, but he is certainly on your. If folks are on the message boards, Tar Pit Premium mess board, go to the football recruiting board link that's pinned there and scroll through there. The national 24/7 board, you can find some stuff there, but Don's board specifically on the Tar Pit Premium message board is where you need to go. And the cool thing, Don, that you have that I like is you have a scholarship roster. So if I click on 2023, I see whatever the scholarship situation is currently. 24, what it'll be there, 25, what it might be there. You do have Drake May listed on your 2024 scholarship roster. Probably not. But anyway, I digress.
Hey, it's not official. Hey, there are a lot of things that could happen. You know,
100%. Hey,
you know what I mean?
with NIL and with money
Not
and
just with
everything.
NIL. I mean, there's just others. There's so many other things. Um, but yeah.
So another name that people are constantly talking about, you could post the name on the message boards and people will chime in a hurry, and that's Jonathan Paler. You updated everybody on him. Top 5 pet peeves, add cats walking into the screen is one of those things. Tell us about, just give us some highlights of your work this week on Important Guys. Paler's one of them. Of course, an in-state guy, a guy that had a lot of nice things to say about Miss Sally. Can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
But an update on him for people that are listening to this that maybe haven't checked out your board.
Yeah. So with Paler in particular, I think from North Carolina's perspective, the unfortunate thing is that he came out saying North Carolina was running second, and this is probably North Carolina's final opportunity. Obviously, they'll continue to recruit him. They'll continue to talk to him, but the next 3 weekends, he's going to Maryland this weekend, NC State the following weekend, and then South Carolina that last weekend, and then he intends on making a decision towards the end of July. So, being second is, I mean, there's not going to be another real opportunity for North Carolina to bypass South Carolina at this point. So that's unfortunate for UNC. But I mean, we kind of knew that. I mean, there was, South Carolina pulled into the lead early on, and UNC was just kind of fighting. If you remember, there was one point where he didn't intend on taking the official visit, and then he wanted to take the official, and then he couldn't find time for the official, and then he found time for the official. So, you know, I mean, UNC definitely made some progress with him, but yes, that's not trending in a great direction. But there was guys like, I don't want to give away too much, but positive, very positive developments with Ashton Woods. We posted his story a couple of days ago. I had a little bit of an update on him in what I posted today. Things look good with Marcus Downs. Yeah, obviously Tim Lawson, who we don't want to talk about, he ended up committing.
We are going to talk about Mr. Lawson. I have a couple of vital questions on
Okay.
that recruitment.
All right.
But I'm not going there yet because I have
Okay.
another question.
All right.
You've talked a lot about a certain wide receiver in state, and the competition for said wide receiver in state, and it sounds like said competition is loading up on top flight wide receivers down in Clemson, being Dabo
Mhm.
Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. How do you expect those commitments down there or over there in Clemson will affect the recruiting of Mr. Taylor?
So I think I put back when I did my first mock class, I put Taylor in there, even though I admitted that, hey, I understand that Clemson's probably the leader here, but my anticipation was that Clemson was going to fill up. And so that's what happened so far. From my understanding, Clemson, their position quota for wide receiver is 2. They got 2 4-star guys to commit to them this past week or this week. And now we know that if you look at, like, I think a lot of people were jumping for joy. and thinking that, oh, Clemson's eliminated. But we've seen with North Carolina, schools are willing to go over that quota for certain players. And I think that Clemson, they're still actively recruiting other wide receivers, including Taylor. But with all of that said, I think the meter for North Carolina's chances has certainly gone up when it comes to Alex Taylor, because I think that they're still messing with that Braylon Staley. There's Mike Matthews, who's a 5-star guy. Top. I think he might be at least top 25, maybe even top 10 recruit. So obviously the odds are shrinking that he ends up at Clemson. And I think it's also good that Taylor is a kid who's not going to rush into anything and wants to take his official visits. And I think that'll give North Carolina a lot of time. In North Carolina, we talked about with Paler and South Carolina getting that last official visit. North Carolina has the last official visit with Alex Taylor, which I think is going to be really key for him.
Paler, Taylor. Man, we got a lot of names here. I'm surprised I can think of them. Noon Dish, Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. Coming up on the half hour, let's talk about Timothy Lawson, Mr. Callahan. The latest North Carolina recruit, tight end, 6'4", 220, a dual sport athlete out of Fort Myers, Florida. Is it Bishop Verreau? That's how I would say it.
Yeah, I believe so.
Like I said, I try to get names right. Let me ask you this. I want you to talk about him specifically, but how big a deal are two-sport athletes, and how does that play into the recruitment here? Also, you have Caleb Cost, that's a baseball player as well, that is a commitment this past season. Uh, how does North Carolina do those? How are they handled in Chapel Hill if it's baseball and football and all? Obviously, baseball and basketball, or excuse me, basketball and football are a little bit different, but with the baseball aspect of it, how did that affect Mr. Lawson?
So I think it helped it helped for North Carolina because they had a good baseball program to kind of lean on, because I think that he said that he was focusing on the school itself and then let the sports stuff kind of be secondary when he was making his decision. But I think that's difficult. So I think that you almost have to look, if you're in his position, you almost have to look at both programs and somehow kind of weigh them to figure out which school has combined the best opportunity. And UNC, and you cover the baseball team, they have a great baseball program, so I think that certainly helped. But I think really for him, he really connected with Freddie Kitchens and really connected with the staff, and that was probably more what drove him to North Carolina. But Mac is very open with a lot of these things, and allowing these kids to do what they want. As far as he wants to play baseball, Mac's willing to accommodate that. I talked to him a little bit about that, and he had an interesting quote, kind of going into detail what the plan is. I mean, the main thing is going to be in the spring, what happens, because UNC obviously has spring practice, and that's baseball season. So now he says that he intends on doing both, and that he's used to that. He's been doing it a long time in high school. I know at one point, I'm definitely not an expert on NCAA rules, but I believe there is a hourly limit on student athletes for how much time they could put towards sports.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's still in place. If it is, then he's going to obviously have to battle that a little bit for to do everything. So
It's interesting. I mean, I know that it's actually an interesting question. I mean, I know that the limits are for one sport. I mean, how does it apply if you're doing two? I mean, that would
I
be an
think it's the
interesting
same
one.
limit.
So they say they get 20 hours a week in the off season or even in season. They've got to figure out how to sort it.
Yes, I am. Again, I'm not an expert on NCAA rules, and they change all the time. And I haven't looked this stuff up, but last I checked, it was 20 hours, and that's what he's going to have to juggle with. And really, you think about it. I mean, this is for the kid's benefit, so that he has enough time to do schoolwork and to not get burnt out and all of that. But if that's in place, and if that's a rule, that's going to make juggling the two sports difficult. And what ultimately ends up happening with a lot of these kids, regardless, if you just look back through history, they try it. They end up having to focus on one sport, and usually it's whatever one they're best at. If you remember Brent Renner, he played on the baseball team. Kendrick Burney played on the baseball team. They
Yeah.
both eventually gave up baseball so they could focus more time on football. I'm trying to think of some other.
Terrell Godwin was a running back commit. He played baseball at Carolina and football. I think he committed to Stanford out of the gate. It's been years. That was
Yeah,
probably before your
that was
time.
before my time. Yeah, that blew me away at that name.
Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, it can be done, and of
yeah,
course, and look, Lawson is a left-handed pitcher, and I believe if my memory is correct from reading your article, he was committed to UCF to play
yeah,
baseball,
yeah.
and decided to, I guess, switch that commitment to North Carolina for potentially both. You can't ever have too many left-handed pitchers, that's for sure.
No, that's a thing. So you got to look that, and we have a guy officially visiting this weekend, James Nesta, who is now I believe he's a right-hander, but he hits or he throws pretty high up there, um, for his fastball, and actually he has some has a bunch of opportunities too for baseball, but he plans on doing both sports. But I think, to answer your question, it's Mac's going to let the kids kind of figure this sort of stuff out, and I think that's good, and that's the way to approach it. And then the kids eventually realize that, hey, I can't do both of these sports. Now, do they realize that after year one, after year two? It all depends on kind of their trajectory, or maybe the sports themselves kind of decide for them.
Yeah,
If there's
that's
one
a great
sport
way.
that they're excelling in and the other one they're not, it makes a whole lot of sense to just kind of devote your time to the one you're excelling in.
Yeah. Last question before we take a break, and come back after the half hour. Don, you are equally good in, I'll say all four sports since you're a hockey guy. You're equally good, and you can go and you can play professional in any of the four major sports. What are you picking?
I'm picking hockey.
Man, you are at it. I'm
If
going where the money is, man. You're equally good and
yeah,
you
I mean,
enjoy it.
I mean, how much? I don't know. I'm pretty simple. So how much money is I don't know. I think if I'm making million plus, it I don't know. I've never had $1 million, so I don't know how different 1,000,000 and 5,000,000 really is. You know what I mean? From a living standpoint and all of that. But
Do
always
you
like
like your teeth? Do you value your teeth? Have you ever
well,
met a hockey player that has all original teeth?
yeah, I mean nowadays it is. It's such a different sport now than it was 10 years ago. But yeah, I mean there's a lot of it's become such a more finesse sort of game. But have you
Uh,
have you ever ice skated?
no,
So
no.
if you ice skate and you know how to ice skate, it's such a cool thing. And then the sport of hockey is it's such a I don't know. I've always liked hockey. I mean, I've never been a basketball guy. I mean, I love baseball, I love football, obviously. Football is so different because it's like each position is like a different sort of situation. That's the way I'm looking at it. Was what would be the most fun to do?
Yeah. I
You
will
know?
say this, in my experience, professional hockey players on the whole are the coolest bunch, out of
Yeah.
all the sports. I mean, those dudes are as down to earth as you can get. It doesn't really matter how good they are. They're just
Yeah.
still pretty salt of the earth and cool folks to deal with and talk to or whatever. And, so yeah, I just the fact that they can skate on ice, with blades on their feet and still play a game
Yeah.
is just nuts to me. But
Yeah.
I kinda like my teeth. They've been in my head for a long time. I wanna keep them there. I had somebody else's stuck in my arm playing basketball one time, but, yeah. Anyway, I'd probably choose,
Well, basketball is where the money is for the most part, unless you're a quarterback.
yeah, I mean, you could be bad. Well, it's relative, right? But they are relatively speaking bad players making just tons of money in all the sports these days. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Football would be the toughest. Anyway, let's take a break. Talk about Johnny T-shirt. JohnnyT-shirt.com sponsors the podcast. Great friends of Inside Carolina and you, the Inside Carolina subscriber. Uh, this time of year, you can go by there. You can get every bit of shorts and T-shirts and all you need. Hats, especially. It's hot outside. You need hats, especially if your head looks like mine. Johnny T-shirt's got you covered in every way. Another thing they do, they got stickers. I'm fascinated by stickers. Load the coolers up with all the different stickers from all the different places I've been. Johnny T-shirt has you covered on the Carolina angle. Anything you could possibly need. Father's Day is coming up. Get it from Johnny T-shirt and get you 10% off with your Inside Carolina Premium subscription. National Guys Pay the Bills. We'll be right back. It's Noon Dish today on a Thursday with Don Callahan. All right, Don. Couple questions I saw in the chat, and a lot of them are going on. How many, and this is a discussion you and I have had sort of off the air, and let's do it generally. How many, when you have these Wednesday camps, how many
Hmm.
players are there roughly? And then how many players are there that warrant offers?
Yeah. So
Specifically North Carolina, but also, maybe
yeah.
P5
So
offers.
we're talking about with the way that they do camps now, which is really just 2 plus this Showtime camp. Those camps have 400-ish players. And really, it's probably, I mean, you're probably talking about, I mean, all right, so to get Power 5 offers, you're probably talking about a handful of guys. Legitimate like, well, to get the UNC offer, I mean, I think just these 2 camps, I think we're talking about 5 guys off the top of my head who had or received, or maybe, I'm sorry, 6 or 7 guys who had or maybe received a scholarship offer. So it's interesting because people always ask me, particularly while I'm there, like, how do you even cover this? I'm like, well, it is a little overwhelming, especially if you're not used to it. But you kind of learn that one, you can, even if you don't know who's there, you can kind of just look. There are size requirements to play college football at the ACC level at UNC. So a lot of these, there are a lot of offensive linemen that are like 6 feet. And so you can just not worry about any of those guys, or you can, the guys who clearly are overweight or who can't move well and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of guys you can kind of sort of eliminate. But I mean, heading into yesterday, I knew Bryce Baker was going to be there, so he was obviously on my list to look at. I knew um, the quarterback, Jacob Smith, whose name we'll probably talk about a lot more. He's a 2026. He's committed. Speaking of baseball, he's committed to NC State for baseball, but he landed a scholarship offer from North Carolina as a quarterback yesterday. So, I mean, and you see a kid like that, and with the quarterbacks, you watch him throw, and it becomes pretty clear after a few reps. I mean, yes, you don't focus so much on, like, because they have the little accuracy thing. You don't focus on who's throwing it into the little pocket. I mean, because really it ends up being the worst ones that hit the pocket a lot. You just kind of look at the throw, look at all the different throws, and how they're throwing it, their motion, all that sort of stuff. It just kind of starts to stick out after a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. There was a great book written, it's been a few years now, called Meat Market.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read that?
I did. I might.
Yeah, if you've got it, I read part of it, but now I don't know what I did with my copy. So if you have it, I need to steal it.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
might
No,
be
that's
mine.
it. If the only thing is it's probably, you can definitely borrow mine. It's a bit, I would say, probably outdated with certain things, but the concept is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The background, Bruce Feldman followed Ed Orgeron while he was the head coach at Ole Miss for a season, focusing on the recruiting and the different obstacles that they came about, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating the sheer numbers, how you manage to do it and cover it and know what you're talking about and follow everybody because I mean, there's literally hundreds and hundreds and thousands of recruits across the country, um, and you cover it all for the North Carolina side of it. But still, it's a lot of names to know. If you're listening to this and you're not a member of the Inside Carolina Premium Message Boards, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, because if you care about recruiting, you're listening to this podcast. And if you care about North Carolina, you're listening to this podcast. And if you want to know all the scoop, check out Don's work on those premium message boards. They're constantly running deals if cost is an issue. So be on the lookout for those and get all of Don's work. Also, shout out to Sherelle and the other guys on the basketball side of the recruiting. Always something to look for there. And props to somebody in the chat, and scrolled past that mentioned all the work that we've been doing with the Players Lounge. Most recent one up is Amari Gaynor on the Players Lounge in the podcast feeds and on the YouTube channel. Check it out. I'd check out the YouTube version of that simply because he's sitting in Keenan Stadium, and everybody here knows what Keenan Stadium looks like on a sunny day. What else, Don? What do we need to cover here before we move forward to our top five list? I mean, obviously, as far as camp season, sort of update us. I know next week we'll do Thursday because there's stuff going on Wednesday. These recruiting visits this weekend are huge. I'll base it off a question. 2024 commits over under 18 by October from Mr. Joshua Fernandez. What you got?
By October,
By October, will Carolina have
I'll go over.
over? So how many do you think they can carry?
I think they could carry a full class, which would be 25. I think though what we started to see last year, and we're nowhere close to that point right now. We still have a couple weeks, I think, before we have a full gauge of how things are going to fall about. But last year, I remember they had a certain number, and that once, like offensive line, for example, they missed on a couple of their targets, and they decided, hey, instead of offering guys, let's save those scholarships for the transfer portal. So I can envision something similar happening where you don't want to force it by offering a kid who you might not necessarily want and just kind of saving some of those scholarships. But I think 18, I would go over on that.
So let me ask you, we're getting deeper into the transfer portal area and the high school recruiting, and I know your take on high school recruiting. You have to build your program via the high school ranks. You have to show development and all, and it's going to be interesting. I've mentioned this before on this show. It's going to be interesting to see how Colorado does with a completely new roster. But when we're talking about portal and a team like North Carolina that still very much values the high school route for this stuff, how much are you seeing coaches like really enjoy being able to recruit fully grown men in the transfer portal? You know what I mean? Because there's
Yeah, I think it's such a different recruitment because most of the recruits kind of let you know immediately what the situation is. So you will know immediately, are they looking for money? Okay, in North Carolina's case, if a kid's just out there looking for money, Mac Brown has made it clear they're scratching them off the board. If they're even interested in North Carolina, a lot of high school kids, they might not be necessarily interested in North Carolina, but they will kind of lead North Carolina on a little bit, just because they're younger and all that. But and they don't know how to handle these sort of things. Transfer portal guys a little bit different with that. But obviously, so transfer portal guys will say, "Hey, yeah, I'm interested in you guys," or "Hey, no, thanks, but no thanks," sort of thing. But yeah, I think really what I hear is more of the fact that like December is just absolutely nuts for college coaches because you have like UNC last year, they had, bowl practice, and then you have normal recruiting, normal high school recruiting, and then you have the transfer portal recruiting, which is literally every day something's changing drastically. And those guys, you try to get them in to come in during the weekends, but in some situations you have to have them come in during the week. So it's just a complete mess with all of that. And then, similarly to that is, how June, is crazy. And we talked about it earlier in the podcast where you have official visits and summer camps going on all in the same month. And it's just, it's crazy. The calendar, it would be ideal if you could somehow spread these things out. The natural calendar doesn't allow for that too much, but it would be great if they could somehow spread this out a little bit better.
Look, the people that get paid to organize this stuff and keep track of it. I mean, obviously at Carolina, Patrick Sotis is a big name there that does a lot of it. But the people under that work for the crowd, and this is not just at UNC. It's at every major college or university across the country. The level of work that goes into trying to figure out this stuff to build a roster. It's not just like Madden, where you can click on whatever you need, or Diamond Dynasty on MLB The Show and those type things where you can pull a card. All the work that goes into it's crazy. Don, anything else before we get into the top five? Because I've got some marked and I have some opinions, and I'm eager to share them. And we're doing
Okay.
pet peeves, but we can toss out other stuff as
All
well.
right. So let me. I guess I
You did not
posted.
do a scoop, so I don't have an elevator to do.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's my fault. I should have got an elevator for
Yeah,
you
yeah.
because put together because I think there was some. I think there were some developments. I don't know.
Number
But
one develop. Let me ask you this: number one development of the week for North Carolina since we last talked. Your opinion?
would be the commitment that you don't
That's
want to talk about.
we talked about him. Timothy Lawson, you throwing shade at Mr. Lawson? Welcome to Chapel Hill. Don Callahan's being in his feels today.
um, I'm trying to think because you might be right because there. I mean, I guess the stuff that happened with Clemson that kind of helps for North Carolina was pretty significant. I feel like there was some guys came out with top schools lists, but a lot of them were like they have like 3 official visits scheduled, but they have like a top 8, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
So that's the list between in the list. Sherelle always talks about on the basketball side the list within the list. That's
yeah,
a thing in football as well, right?
yeah, I think so in some situations. Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like I said, June is one of those months where 2 days ago feels like it was 2 weeks ago. So something could have happened late last week, and I'm just not remembering it at all. But we definitely have had it all covered on Inside Carolina, so check that out. But to prepare you for this coming weekend, I just posted before we hopped on here the kind of like a preview for the weekend. Who's visiting this weekend? Who's visiting North Carolina this weekend? What UNC targets are visiting elsewhere, and a couple of tidbits about some other things are on there.
Yeah, I mean the premium message board is loaded up with all sorts of information. Let me ask you a last question before we move on to top five. Have you ever seen a recruit in your days covering North Carolina recruiting that comes down to Baylor versus North Carolina? It's got to
I
be a
can't
first.
I can't think of one. We are in because of NIL, we are in a new sort of stratosphere where North Carolina is competing with a different group of recruits and or different I'm sorry, different group of schools. And I know people are getting frustrated and they're like, "Oh, why is North Carolina competing, against Vanderbilt and Duke?" I just think that's kind of because of NIL, that's kind of where things are. And Baylor apparently is also in that same sort of stratosphere area.
And it's fascinating to me. Folks want to know why. I mean, there are Heals for Life, donate to the collective. There are ways to assuage your bad feelings about how NIL is in a positive manner. At any rate, anything left? Because I'm going top five pet peeves right here in a second.
Um,
Let
I
me
guess
make sure I haven't missed any questions. I do not want to get uh,
yeah.
top
Well,
fives, top
Sean
five.
Sean left. We probably should have said bye to Sean. He
Yeah,
has
Sean, he left with a parting shout out to myself and Taylor and Jason for all the work that's going on. So props to him for mentioning all that. Like I said, we answered Joshua Fernandez's question. If there's another question in that chat that I have missed, please say it again. I will be glad to get to it. Let's go top five list. Last week we had top five musical artists. We have done top five actors. Uh, can't remember what else we've done. Like you said, time flies, but we're doing top five pet peeves. I'm gonna call up Eric Miller's because this I think might be a shot at you.
ooh.
Top five hockey mascots as you sit with one over your shoulder. That is, we talked about Armando Baycott's ability to throw shade. That's some shade, my friend. Mascot flags.
Let me
Oh,
let me
he
ask you
shouted
this.
out at me.
Can I,
Black and
can
white photos. I'm delete Eric Miller out of the chat.
I,
He shout
Eric
out
Miller's
all
not
of
going to be that MVP.
us.
And he
Certainly
had
shade on all
sharks.
of us, and it was that
What's the
passive aggressive shade. I love it.
yeah?
Props, Mr. Miller, because he's talking about my black and white photos
And
and
who?
my
What about
flags.
what's the thing about the sharks?
I don't know. I got some blue shark somewhere, but that's an old
No
life.
sharks.
I know.
Oh, I thought you said shorts.
It says sharks. I said blue
Hey, let
shark.
me ask you: is there a city in the United States that has a better pair of mascots than Philadelphia with the Fanatic and Gritty?
Uh, That thing behind you scary to me. I mean, it looks like if he had a knife, he would be in the top 5 scary
He is
movies
a great
right there.
follow on Twitter, by the way,
Hey,
if you're looking for that sort of thing.
how does he tweet with the big old fat fingers?
I don't know.
Here you go. Jeffrey Polly. This is a good one. Liars, don't like those.
Toolbars.
Toolbar. I mean, I just store my stuff at other people's houses and have to remember. No common sense. Common sense is an interesting thing because if you don't have it, do you know you don't have it? Would it be common sense to know you don't have
Well,
common sense?
there's that saying that common sense is uncommon, and I feel like that's so true.
Yeah, bad
Like, I
drive.
feel like I am not, like, a very smart person, I don't think, but, like, when I go out in the world and I go to, grocery store or whatever, I feel like I'm freaking Einstein. There are so many dumb people in this world,
Wow,
and
and you live in high society neighborhood.
they're everywhere. I mean, I travel, and it amazes me how stupid people are, but anyway.
Yeah, that's a little harsh, but I feel you. I agree. It's just like, what are we doing here, folks?
Yeah.
All right, Eric Miller, you already had your day. Sean Crawley, since he left, no particular order. People talking at the register on the phone.
Mm,
If I worked at and I was in customer service of some type, and you were on your phone, I would not help you. I wouldn't. It'd probably create a storm, but I'm not. I despise when somebody's either texting or especially talking, and talking on the speakerphone. You remember back in the day, everybody had
yeah,
Nextels where you click it and they go
yeah.
and be like, "What you doing?" Hate that kind of stuff, man. Put it in your ear and talk to whoever you want to. Empty containers in the fridge. So we had this debate at the house, and you probably do with your kids. The ice tray. So our ice maker doesn't work anymore. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
had a glacier in our freezer, so I just unhooked the ice maker. So we used the trays. And I know he's probably listening right now. Fill up the ice trays and fill up the ice. Don't leave it empty every time. Not flushing toilets. That's kind of nasty. I always flush the toilet multiple times. Liars again, people that are always late. You know what one of my favorite saying is, and you're not paying attention to me, but my favorite
I'm
saying is
working on
that
my list.
if you are late, you are telling me that my time is not as important as yours. Keep that in mind. That is the soapbox for the day.
Or, I mean, things happen and shoot a text, "Hey, I'm running 10 minutes behind."
Yeah, habitually late though. They,
Habitually like, yeah. Eh, yeah.
like
Um,
like
I think
I
some
can
people
tell
are
a
just born with it.
yeah, well
You know
set your
who
clock.
who's always late? Used to drive me nuts. You know who I'm gonna say?
Is it they work for us?
Yeah.
Don't say it. Don't say it. I always
Um,
say the
but
meeting
it's
started
not
at
I love
9:45.
this guy though. So this is just, you know, Greg Barnes. We
Well,
used to share a parking pass, and, I mean, you can get mad at Greg. I don't think he would really even, respond or anything, but, yeah, I'd go pick him up, and he'd be like, "Alright, I'll be out there in a second." I'd be waiting in my car for, like, 15 minutes, and then he would get in the car and be like, "Hey, can we stop at the gas station? We're already late. Can we stop at the gas station? I need to go get something." And so he goes and gets something. Now, in typical Greg fashion, he comes out with something for me too.
yeah, see.
So, no, I love Greg, so this is not me, but Greg is always fashionably late. He
Um,
knows it.
yeah, if you're 15 minutes late, oh, if you're 15 minutes early, you're late. That's what the coaches always would say and stuff like that. But yeah, there's people. Look, I got things I need to do before I go out in the world. So if I'm late, I was actually doing something,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to be there. I do my best to be on time. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've been called out for being late multiple times. Let's go. Pet peeves from Mark Kenton saying possible. Anything is possible. Fans saying they're diehard and complain about everything and negative people. All right. Here's another soapbox thing, Don.
Okay.
And this is probably more prevalent in pro sports.
So I am here's the problem with this. I am I might have 10.
Okay. We can go through them because I'm gonna hit a couple more here. But my
But go
thing is
ahead.
this is
I'm just
if
thinking of things.
you quote unquote pull for a sports team,
Uh-huh.
right? Why does it seem to make you, and you in general, so miserable? I don't understand. There's like people that lose their minds about sports teams. Now, granted, I've gotten mad and I've probably lost a bathroom door before from a sporting event, but people that are just constantly and they show up just to talk ugly, and then when the team's doing well, you don't see them. I can't do that. I just don't
Really?
understand.
So, I mean,
Sports are an entertainment thing. It's supposed to be enjoyable. I just can't get so worked up. You're a Philly fanatic. Do you get
yeah.
worked
So
up?
in Philadelphia, if you listen to sports talk there, it's all just complaining about stuff. Even when things are going well, it's complaining about stuff. Maybe that's why I'm so tolerant of the IC people, because like it's nothing compared to what I'm used to, and it's the same thing in New York. I used to growing up. I used to listen to Mad Dog and Mike. Boston's kind of similar. It's just kind of complaining.
I
I
just don't get it. I don't get it. It's like
I think people are so unrealistic. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
have an uncle, and I'm on a chat with a couple of family members, and it's just like he expects like every single time a Philly comes up to bat to get on
hit a
base.
grand slam. Like hit a grand
Yeah.
slam and there ain't nobody on base. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, the pitcher should throw no hitters every single time, and it's just like, this is baseball. These guys, if they're 30%, they are great, you know? I mean, if they're 30%, they're probably Hall of Famers. So, I mean, yeah, so that kinda drives me nuts. I think people are just so unrealistic, and they got especially in baseball where it's like, even, like, the really good teams aren't even winning 60% of their games,
Yep.
you know? So it's crazy.
I just don't understand. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't intentionally put myself in situations where I'm going to be upset. Like I just don't get it. But and it's not and I'm not talking about just like Carolina fans or it's just sports fans in general. It's just like people are miserable watching an entertainment event. I mean, anyway, Joshua Fernandez, he might get the MVP today. Litterers, bad drivers, not keeping their word, people with too many items in the express lane at the supermarket. One thing I do not do is if I have fruits or vegetables that have to be weighed, I don't go through the express lane because I end up screwing it up. So I always go through the regular lane. Coach K, anything Duke related? Anything there you want to talk about? I mean, people just can't drive in general, but I think a lot
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it
the
is people
driving
don't
thing
pay
is on
attention.
my list, so I'll get to it then.
All right, let's get off of that one. A couple more here. People gonna people, Mark Kenton said. That is, he nailed that. All right, Preston, I'll give you this. People that butt into conversations they aren't involved in, driving the
Okay.
wrong way in the parking lot, eating loudly, snackling, not utilizing turn lanes.
So I like Preston's because he's specific. You know,
Yeah.
with the driving the wrong way in the parking lot. That's a legitimate. Some of these things are things that we don't like. Like number 4, driving the wrong way in that parking lot. That's like a legitimate pet peeve.
Okay. So let's do yours.
Okay. All right. So, number 1 for me is liars. It's not really a pet peeve. I hate people I can't trust. I hate and liars and bullshitters. I hate that sort of stuff. Drives me nuts. Yeah, just give it to me straight. I can handle criticism. I can handle negativity, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to cry. So just be honest.
So people that are different, to go along with that, and I'll try to tick off mine as you do yours. People that are different every day. Like I can deal with mean folks. I can deal with really nice people. I can't deal with the person that's like nice one day and mean the next, or people that wake up and say they're just tired. I mean, just be nice, everybody. And I got something in my eye. Hold on. People just in general that are not nice, but they fluctuate.
Yeah,
Consistency. That's
you don't like bipolar people.
inconsistency. We'll call it that way. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I butted into your conversation. One of Preston's pet peeves.
Yeah. So all right. So after that, I got bandwagon fans. I
I agree
hate
with
it.
that.
Like people are like, they'll say, "Well, how are you a Flyers fan? They suck." And I'm like, "What? So I'm supposed to like not be a fan of theirs?" It just drives me nuts. I really like the whole like. There are certain things that people will tell me, I'm going to immediately judge them. If they tell me they're a Cowboys fan, I'm immediately judging them. If they tell me they're a Yankees fan and they don't have a New York accent, I am judging. I am judging you. Okay.
Bama football fans, Duke basketball fans, Yankee
Yeah.
fans, Dallas
Yeah.
Cowboys, and
It just drives me nuts.
I'm
I don't know.
fair
Maybe
weather.
because
Yeah,
I don't like you talked about earlier about the whole like getting super upset. I mean, it affects me. Now, I leave the room and my day goes about like normal, but I'm pissed when I'm watching the game. If something happens, they lose or whatever it may be, or something stupid happens, or you lead off with Kyle Schwarber, which makes no freaking sense to me because he's batting 170. That you want to tell that is my right now currently that is my biggest pet peeve. So I've been busy, so I haven't been able to, but I have been watching Phillies games ever since Schwarber got put back on leadoff because it's so stupid that you have a 170 hitter who led the league in home runs last year batting first, and like all the Phillies fans are so excited because the Phillies beat the crappy Detroit Tigers the other day, 1-0, because Schwarber came up and hit a leadoff home run, and that was it. Like we're going to be able to beat the Braves and the Mets by a single solo home run every game. It's just so stupid. It drives me freaking nuts. And I think Thompson should be fired as the Phillies manager. But
I have
anyway,
never seen you get so fired up, and you
dude,
were
it is.
so
It's actually we're on Facebook together, so some people have been making remarks about my boycotting of the
well,
Phillies.
you're here's the thing. Those dudes are gonna cash a check regardless of whether they hit a home run or go
I
bat
know.
176, and that's why I do not. And now college sports are getting to be like that. But that's why I do not get fired up about it.
Well,
Anyway,
for me, it's not about Schwarber himself. I get it. I understand his job is to hit home runs, but let's put him further back in the lineup so we could potentially have some guys on base. You got Harper who's hitting 300. You have Turner who typically is a 300 hitter. Get those guys. It just drives me nuts. Anyway, I know we're getting off topic. No one gives a crap about the Phillies.
no, I'm taking notes. Note to self: do not mention Philly's
You know,
batting lineup to
no,
Don.
no. Well, you need to check it each day. I get the little alert on their batting lineup. I see Schwarber. I'm like, oh, not watching the game tonight. But anyway,
I'll go with
uh,
fair weather fans. You call them bandwagon.
yeah, same. Well, I don't know. I just don't
Fair
like the
fair
bandwagon
weather are
fans.
the ones that like I'm not going. They lost last week. I'm not going.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in Carolina when 1 in 10 happened. Not 1 year, but 2 years. Never
Yeah,
missed a
and you know
game.
what? And here's the thing too: is when your team is bad, that ends up being better experiences. You can go to the games. You're not paying a lot for the tickets. You end up getting better seats. So it's not it ends up being a bad thing. And I mean, there were times where the Flyers were really bad, and I still remember those years fondly. I mean, obviously, it's much better when they're going to the Stanley Cup, but it is what it is. All right, so to continue on with my list, I got drivers, and there's a couple things here. It's drivers on the highway. I do a lot of highway driving, so it drives me nuts when you're either tailgating me or if you're in the left lane and you're driving slow. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
If you are trying to get by someone, cool. But like if you're not trying to get by someone and you're not at least going, the speed limit, get the hell out of the left lane. The other thing that drives me nuts. There's another thing I'm going to judge someone on. If you're one of those people, and Tommy, you probably do this. You look like someone who does this, who
Wow.
backs up into parking spots. Do you do that?
If I need to be able to get out in
I'm not.
traffic,
I'm not.
yes.
I'm not saying like if there's a legitimate reason, like you're unloading or you're at a sporting event and you want to make sure you get out properly. That's I have no
Yes.
issue with that.
I will
But if you
back in a parking deck. Absolutely.
okay, that's understandable because it makes it easier later on. But if you're going to, Harris Teeter and you're taking 15 minutes to back up into your spot just because, that drives me freaking nuts.
I just park so far away so I can get some steps in.
Yeah, well, anyway, all right, so what else do I have here?
I do not
Um,
like people that drive on your hip. Like if I'm on the
when
interstate, and
you
this
talk
happens
about
a
your
lot.
blind spot?
Yeah,
Yeah,
my hip right here, they stay there.
yeah.
And I speed up to get them off my hip, or I'm trying to get around the car in front of me. I need to go and pass a car, but they're right there, so I'm not able to do it, and they just stay right there on my hip. I don't like hip drivers.
Yeah. No, and I remember being taught not to be in someone's blind spot
Yeah.
because it's so dangerous. But yeah, no, people do that and drives me nuts. Now,
What's
fortunately,
that?
now it's not that big of a deal because I have the little alert thing on my rear view, but it's
Yeah.
just so stupid. And it's just
I don't have that. I'm
that
not
goes
motor.
back to the whole like making me feel really intelligent. Like, why are you driving there so that we can get into an accident?
Yeah.
So stupid.
This is
Um,
hilarious. I've never seen Callahan fired up.
we should never have done this one. Yeah, so that was my driving one. All right, so I had the whole cleaning up after yourself thing. I had the same problem. We have 2 ice makers in our refrigerator because ice is a very big deal. Ice in my house is probably worth more than gold because if someone comes in and steals all the ice, people get pissed in my house.
Yeah,
Um,
I use frozen mango, frozen pineapple as my ice cubes
Gotcha. Okay.
because I only drink water and some other stuff, but mostly just water during the day.
Yeah, we mostly just drink water and
Are you a faucet water person or are you like filtered water?
I do that. We have the filter thing on our fridge, so we just do that.
Mhm.
So, but when we had to purchase, well, actually, our last 2 refrigerators, we made sure we had dual ice makers because of ice in our house. But we have issues with this is my kids. They'll like take the last thing of something and leave the box there. It drives me freaking nuts. And
And you go in and you think you're about to get it and it's
yeah.
gone.
Well, and the other thing too is like, who did this? Not me, not me, not me. Like, well, someone had to. Like, no one breaks into our house, steals the last cupcake, and leaves, So, anyway, and it happens all the time, drives me freaking nuts. Let me see.
Hilarious.
The
This might be the
talking on the
first.
phone thing. So, particularly, yes, I think it's rude. You're going up to register. I think people have stopped doing that some. I mean, maybe they still do. I think that's rude. But you know what drives me nuts too is people who have the earbuds in and you don't know, and
And
they're
they're like, "Are
talking.
they talking to me?"
Yeah, and
I'm
my
sorry.
wife does that, and, like, it drives me freaking nuts, and she'll do that when we go to, like, one of the kids' sporting events, and, like, people are always like, "Oh, talk to her," and I have to say, "No, I wanted to
She's
say
on the
something."
phone.
Yeah, I wanted to say something
It
different.
doesn't matter if you whisper here. She's gonna hear this later, and I'm sending it to her at the 102 mark. And look at this right here. My there is such thing as a wheel, son.
I knew it. I knew it.
All right, yeah. Eric Miller says, "Get off Don's lawn." All right,
That's
what
right.
else you got? Come on.
The only other thing, and this is another shot at my wife, is flossing is very important, okay? But you should do the flossing in the bathroom, the privacy of your own bathroom, and put it into the trash can. You should not be doing the flossing other places and then just leave the floss there. That's
Oh
disgusting.
my god, that is kinda disgusting.
Yeah, and,
I buy the little things where it has the piece of floss in it, whatever you call them, the placker things.
yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, my dentist got me on these, like, pick things.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and it's got, like, a little short it's got thing.
Mine's actually just like a stick that has, like, bristles, so it's a little different.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't
Yeah,
have
so I
that.
use that, and I use it, and I put them in the trash can.
Wow, man.
Alright, so Tommy, you have, I set the bar pretty high for you, Tommy.
Yeah, I can't even remember all mine because a bunch of I never write anything down. Shopping carts. Put your damn shopping cart in the thing. How many times have you ever walked out to your car and there's a shopping cart in your car? Also, paying attention to somebody else when I'm talking. That is a huge conversation thing. People
This
don't need
is
to do
real.
that. This is real life. So shopping carts, uh, people on their phone, like checking their phone, like I've done a couple times to you when we're having a conversation. People that talk out loud or have their phone on speakers, driving
Just
in
be
my
clear,
hips.
I am taking notes, alright?
Okay.
I was working on my top 5. You gave me this I knew it was gonna be a project. I wanted a week to do this, and I had to do it within 45 minutes, so I had to write while we were doing stuff.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just a generally all around nice person. My thing is do what you say you're gonna do. That's probably my number one. Whatever that is, do what you say what you're gonna do. If you say you're gonna do, you know, I'll do this or do that. Just do it. I can't stand people that say they're going to do something, don't do it. I'm pretty boring.
Me too.
Don't tell me about the movie if I haven't seen it and I want to watch it. If
Yeah. That's
ask
just the
me
courteous
first.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't watch a movie with me and you've seen it and I
And
have
talk.
not, and tell me what's
Yeah.
happening. Or like, uh-oh, oh, watch this
Yeah, yeah,
part.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So those
Or
things.
say, "Oh, this is funny," because usually you completely ruin it because the whole part of that being funny is the unexpected aspect of it, and if you're telling them, then it's not unexpected, so it's not nearly as funny. Yeah, no,
Pe
I'm with you.
People that talk at concerts,
Okay.
like, and they try to talk loud enough for the person beside them to hear, but the music's loud, so they're yelling. We went to a concert at the Cottage at Atlantic Beach the other day. Corey Smith played. It was like 150 people there. Great. It was unbelievable. And that's a pretty big artist that plays bigger crowds than that, and he came there at Atlantic Beach. So if you're in Atlantic Beach and you want to check out a cool venue, go there. I think they're having Darius Rucker later this year. Tickets a little too high. But we stood right next to him playing and right next to the speakers because I knew that that was a crowd that was going to be talking the whole time
Mhm.
and I couldn't hear them.
Mhm.
And so that's a big deal for me. And it's like, why are we talking? If you want to talk, why did you come to a concert where somebody's playing music or talking or whatever? Those are huge things to me. And that's about it.
Okay.
You know, if no, don't look at the food I'm eating and go, ooh, what is that?
Yeah.
That's another one, so
Or
pretty boring.
I get accused of, like, making the same things, and when I wanna make something different, then the entire time, you know, I'm getting criticized for this different choice.
I got a text, and I'm looking at my phone when you're talking, and it said, "Don needs to go ahead and make the couch tonight because that's where he's gonna be sleeping because I'm gonna send
Hey,
her the link."
I, um I didn't, like, use her name.
Alright, a couple more. These are potentials for next week. Sean Crawley says, "Top 5 candy bars."
I
That's a
like it.
possibility for next week. Even though I'm not a huge candy bar person anymore, I can say that I think Heath bar is probably in my top. And then Jeffrey Polly, top 5 greatest college and pro dynasties.
Ooh, that's another one I feel like I would need some time to think about.
Well, think about it. We might be able to do that one, but we're gonna do college and we're gonna do pro
Okay.
because I
Yes.
feel like there's enough in
Well,
each.
and plus we don't wanna run out of top 5s.
Yeah, so we're gonna do so next week we're gonna do what are we doing? Candy
Candy
bars next
bars?
week? All right, next week, top 5 candy bars brought to you by the Noon Dish. We'll discuss it after you've had
Yeah,
lunch
and,
so you can.
Eric Rust, we haven't talked about enough, but, he's not in here. He was
I
not
haven't
in
seen him today, but Eric, if you're listening or watching,
this
you are.
podcast was dedicated to you.
Yep. Gritty says hello from behind Don's back there, and he says you are the chat MVP, not to be confused with Chat GPT, the chat MVP at the Noon Dish. Don, anything left before we get out of here? We've run over,
We
but
have
it's
run
been pretty
over.
fun.
Um, I think that's it.
What's the week ahead? Commitment this week? Yes or no? Not who. Should we
Um,
expect any noise this week?
I'll say so you're giving me over under of 0, right?
Over under 0.5.
Point 0.5, I go over.
Over. So stay tuned to Don Callahan's work at Tar Pit Premium Message Boards in the Inside Carolina on the premium side. All the recruiting scoop you need. Johnny T-shirt, johnnyt-shirt.com. Thanks to the folks that join us here. I know we cut up a little bit, but it's pretty fun. But a lot of quality information from Don to supplement the work he does at Inside Carolina. As always, my friend Don, I will talk to you next week, next Thursday on the Noon Dish. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.